I'm playing a Nintendo 64, the original console, with an Xbox controller. I'm playing N64, N64, the original console, with a PlayStation 4 controller. I'm playing original N64 with a Switch Pro controller, and I'm upside down. The upside down part's not helping, but the Switch Pro controller. Look, I got one rig. The Switch Pro controller is really cool, though. Let's talk about this. Hi, I'm Mike, and welcome to Retro Boost. So I've talked a lot about controllers, Retro Bit and Retro Fighters controllers, these modern aesthetic ergonomic controllers that work for old game consoles, all types, all situations, very cool products. Something really interesting though, what if you could mess around with like current controllers by Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, but use them on an old game console? Case in point here, N64. Now that's pretty cool. Put to use a controller you may already own on an old console? Awesome! Sign me up! How's it work? This is how it works. It's their RetroTime N64 adapter, which is powered by Blue Retro. Blue Retro being a huge project. It's a line of products. There are various controller adapters that are all like Bluetooth-based protocols. They make them for a variety of game consoles, and they're kind of powered by this programming that pretty much, it seems, one individual has helmed, an individual known by Darth Cloud that hosts all this stuff on GitHub that powers these devices. But these adapters, this one here being for N64, allow you to utilize like Bluetooth controllers on like whatever game console the adapter is for, which is really awesome because you're not having to maintain a collection of new controllers. You just buy the adapter and you can use the same controllers on all your game consoles. Very cool idea. I got my hands on the N64 one by RetroTime. They actually have a GameCube one coming out on the horizon, which is really interesting. We're talking about the N64 one today, though, to stay focused. It's just very exciting. What this allows us to do, plug this in the N64, and now controllers like Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Switch Pro controller, Wii U Pro controller, friggin' Google Stadia controller, all that stuff can now pair to this, and you can play Nintendo 64 with them. So I'm going to go into a little more detail about the device itself, show it in action, because there's a lot more you can do with it than just pair the controllers. We got button mapping and more that I'll be talking about. It's going to be very awesome. So if you like the video, find it informative, feel free to subscribe. It is the best way to help me grow the channel. But let's take a closer look now at the device itself. Okay, so how does this thing work? Well, it's plug and play, and I really mean that. You can plug it in and go. There's nothing else required. When you plug it into the console and turn the console on, it begins to pulse. Pulsing means it's searching for a controller. At this point, you can take any compatible controller, and again, the list for compatible controllers is enormous. Put said controller into pairing mode, and if it's compatible, it'll pair up to the Blue Retro receiver, at which point it turns off. The light turns off. Off means it's paired. Solid means something's gone wrong, you try to power cycle it. Pulsing, searching. Simple enough. When you pair a controller, you're good to go. At that point, it's gonna go. That's the operation in a nutshell. It's very simple. You can tap the button on the front of the receiver to disengage whatever controller's paired to it. Bear in mind that some controllers, like Xbox One, stuff like that, are very aggressive about repairing. They go into pairing mode, essentially, when they lose a connection like this. So unpairing it from the Blue Retro device here, it kind of repaired instantly. So for me to swap between controllers rapidly, I kind of had to rip the batteries out of the Xbox One controller to get to do that. If I was simply turning off the console and leaving, that wouldn't be an issue because the controller would eventually just turn off. But just to be aware of that kind of thing. And then you press and hold the button for 10 seconds to do a factory reset in case you've messed something up with the settings or made a mistake or whatever. That's how you do it. So that's really all there is to it. It really is plug and play. Now, what more you can do is the customization aspect of it, because it does support button mapping, for example. And that's all achieved through a interface, a web interface that the Blue Retro device, they all use like the same interface. So there's a website address you go to, and I'll have a link for that. All the relevant links will be in the description of this video. You go to that link, it brings you to the web page. You can then pair the device from there, so make sure it's not paired to a controller before you try to do this. But you can then pair the interface to the device. You do that by going into whatever option you want and then pair it for each thing you want to do. So you don't like pair it on the master screen and then go. You go into whatever option you want to pick, then pair the receiver. And then from there you can do whatever you want. So if the main thing I'm interested in here is button mapping to tailor my experience. So we go into the advanced properties, advanced configuration, and we can pair the device. Now, pairing sometimes didn't work for me. Additionally, I can only get this thing to pair on my Lenovo laptop that's like 6 years old. It would not pair to my computer using a Bluetooth adapter, and it also would not work with either my phone or my tablet, which is an iPad Pro from like 3 years ago. Didn't work on any of those devices, so I'm curious what users of this are using with success, because I was only able to get it to work using Microsoft Edge on this laptop, just as an aside here. That's why the quality of the capture is a little weird, because I'm capturing this on my laptop instead. But we get it paired, and when it does pair successfully, you are able to change a whole bunch of things. So we can map buttons. At first this kind of confused me, then I kind of got the hang of it. The left column is the source. The source is the controller. The right column is the receiver, the input. So you're telling it what you want it to do. And you can actually filter and change what the columns reflect to whatever controller and console you're trying to mess with. So we can change the left column to Xbox if I'm using an Xbox controller, and then change the right column to N64 since I'm using an N64 console, and that makes it really easy to determine what Xbox button I want to do with what N64 function. And then from there you just tailor it how you want and hit save. And that's really all there is to button mapping. It's very straightforward once you kind of understand how you're able to filter it and things like that. At first, for whatever reason, I was struggling with it, but then I got it after multiple tries and seeing the menu. So it's actually quite simple to do. There's other functions that are built into this web interface as well. There's like a bunch of presets that are like preset kind of button mapping configurations. We've also got the ability to upload, download, and change the memory card, because this thing does emulate having like a memory pack inserted, and you are able to download that to back it up, because the memory for these packs is like pretty small, only a handful of games and you'll have filled it up. But you can now download them, so you can like quote-unquote clear it out, download and back it up, and then reload as necessary for whatever game you're trying to use. We can also update the firmware. The most recent firmware added support for Google Stadia controllers, so anyone with the Google Stadia that you can't use anymore or don't want to use anymore, hey man, repurpose that controller, use it for your N64. Boom, you can do it. It's awesome. You can download the firmware from the GitHub page. And then from there you can install it. You'll get like a big list of all the things that Blue Retro products are for. I chose the N64 one, let it go through the process, and then sure enough I see Google Stadia now in the controller filters list, which tells me that it worked, which is pretty cool. That seems to be the most notable thing I noticed on the changelog for the most current firmware, but as always, things like stability and stuff like that will always be a factor, so it's worth getting it updated. That's what the web interface allows us to do in short. There's quite a lot you can mess around with it, and I would encourage you guys to explore it. It's very cool. There's so much you can mess around with and change to really tailor your experience. I've messed around with the button mapping and got it to a point that I really like. I've kind of built this out for like optimizing Star Fox 64, which is what I'm going to play around with as my main thing here to kind of mess around and test it. But you can really build it however you like, whatever you think is most functional and makes things straightforward for the game in question. You can do. It's a very capable device when you start to dig into it, but at the same time, it's also great from a casual perspective because you could just plug it in and go. Like, you don't have to do any of this stuff. It works out of the gate. You don't have to do firmware to play with, like, these kind of controllers. Google Stadia was one of the newest added ones, and down the road, Retro Fighters is going to be adding their own update that allow, like, the Bluetooth-based Brawler 64 to work with this device. Stuff like that you need to update it for, but otherwise, just to play with an Xbox or PS4 or stuff like that, you just go. It's really simple. So now, let's play some games and see how N64 really feels with controllers like these. Alright, first up, Star Fox 64 with an Xbox controller. It's in pairing mode over there, so we'll turn it on. That was fast. Solid light means this is paired. Let's see if the light turned off over there, so boink. How awesome. Let me just sync this up. 3, 2, 1, start. Alright, let's just hop into the main game. Alright, here we go. So the first major thing I remapped is that the right trigger doubles as R, which just makes the controls feel more symmetrical, because Z on a modern controller like this is usually relegated to the left trigger. But now I've got Z on the left trigger and R on the right. A game like Star Fox 64, where you bank left and right, this feels way more natural, and I like it a lot. Further, though, I've swapped a lot of the other buttons so that B is bomb. B for bomb just makes sense to my brain. And then optimizing some of the controls, I also swapped around so that the top right shoulder button, which would be normally R, is now relegated to, I think it's C forward, which is boost. So it just kind of helps do more function without my thumb having to leave the primary button area. So these are the kind of things you can do with the remapping. You can really optimize the game to however you like. Keep in mind there are those like presets that'll do various things. I didn't mess around too much really at all with those, and I did one, but a lot of those, kind of like what I did here, are dependent on whatever game in question they're like modeled for. But so far, boy, gaming on, whoops, C4, gaming on N64 with this controller feels awesome. It feels like emulation, like how the control part of it feels. That's a big fun part about emulation, is using controllers like this, but now I can do it with the actual hardware! Yeah! So, Xbox, no issues with pairing, and the way of mapping the controls definitely makes Star Fox more fun, because now all these functions at the tip of my fingers, no problems, boosting with right shoulder, banking left and right, feels awesome. And I already own the controller, so I didn't have to buy a new controller. The adapter itself is pretty reasonably priced, so this is a pretty cool way to get additional life out of the controllers you may already own. Let's try PlayStation 4. Alright, now, PlayStation 4. So I turn it on. Controllers in pairing mode, or the receivers in pairing mode. Looks like I already paired it. Ah, good to go. And same controls are already mapped, because PlayStation and Xbox, even this modern Switch controller, since they share so many buttons, there's no need to go back into the Blue Retro interface and change anything. I can just hot swap to this controller, all the same buttons do the same functions, at least as far as I can tell so far. I haven't messed around too much with PlayStation 4. Circle does bombs, which means it breaks a square. Makes sense. So yeah, all the same face buttons are doing the same functions. When it comes to preference, I've always really enjoyed Xbox controllers. Personally, I feel like the Xbox One controller is like one of the greatest controllers ever designed by man. But the console itself is another story. They've designed an excellent controller, but their other parts of their company have slid. PlayStation, I love PlayStation 3, but PlayStation 4, not one that I like too much. I think the controllers are a little harder to mess around with than the Xboxes, but that's just me. If you like one or the other, yeah, it's fine. I'm not dumping on it. It's a great controller still too. So far so good though. No issues with PlayStation. It's stayed paired. I did see that in the interface you can also assign like turbo functionality if you wanted to, so me rapidly pressing one of these buttons, you could map a different one and make it a turbo button for the same function. So again, there's like a lot of stuff that you can do And see here, my right shoulder button doing boost. I didn't have to stop shooting because my thumb doesn't leave the thumb pad. Oh, yeah! So, PlayStation 4. Awesome. Paired instantly, no issues. Now, turning this off is kind of impossible. So my only option would be to turn off the console, let this die before I try my next one, which is going to be the Switch controller. Okay, Switch Pro controller. Now this one I was using earlier on my Switch, so I'm going to have to put it in pairing mode. Press and hold the little pairing button with a bobby pin here. And let's see what happens. Ooh, did it pair? Hey, look at that! 3 in a row, no issues. Press start. Now, the Switch Pro controller is a nice one. So still doing Star Fox. Ooh, okay, so here we go. So my face buttons here, still that same setup I used with the Xbox controller, but now things are going to be a little different. So the buttons themselves in their positions have not changed, but the letters have, so it's going to throw me off a little bit. So B is actually A, and A is actually B. So when you're mapping controllers, you might want to take that into account. Some people might even be fazed by that, but someone like me, my brain kind of looks for the letter, not the position. That's just how my brain works with this stuff, unfortunately. But here we go. Uh-oh. Having some trouble, actually. What's going on? No, the controller disengaged. I wonder what caused that. Let me put it back into pairing mode. The receiver itself is looking for a connection. Alright, recovered. That is the first time anything has lost the connection. I'm roughly, I don't know, 8 feet away from, maybe not even that much. It's probably 8 feet. 8 feet away from where the receiver is, clear line of sight. The controller itself was charged very recently, like day before yesterday, and it's only gotten about an hour of use in between, so likely not the battery, but interesting. Given that it was the first time it's happened, I'm not going to hold it too harshly, but it is worth noting that that did happen. Other than that little snafu, though, it's working great, and like the other two controllers, it's got a great feel to it to play a classic console like this, but with like an actual modern controller. So it's very interesting feeling, rather, but really cool, because if you think about it, it's like I didn't have to buy anything new. Uh-oh, I thought it was gonna bite the dust. Oh no, got him. Okay, see, I blame the controller if that didn't work. The triggers on the Pro controller are so different than the Xbox. The Xbox has the most amount of like depth push, in my opinion, whereas these are like kind of tappy style, but that actually, this is probably really the closest thing to like an actual N64's Z and R, because like they didn't have a lot of depression to them, whereas like the Xbox One and PS4 really do. So that's another interesting call out. But yeah, so far, feeling good. You can see that I tried to rebuild the display there, and didn't really go so well. But okay, so what did we experience here? Well, playing rapid succession, the 3 kind of major controllers that I can mess around with, Xbox, PlayStation 4, and then Switch Pro. None of the controllers had any problem at all pairing up, which was really cool to see. The only kind of flub that occurred was when the Switch Pro controller lost connection and had to be put back into pairing mode. That's the first time that's happened. Even before I filmed what I'm doing right now, I spent the past like week playing with this console, and that never never happened before. So that's very interesting. And as I was saying in my kind of on-the-spot commentary, I'm not super far away from it. It's got a clear line of sight, about 8 feet away. Shouldn't really be causing interference issues. So I'm not really sure what caused it to disconnect, but if that's the one time it's happened so far, it's not too big of a deal, just interesting that it occurred. So not sure if it's the receiver or the controller that made that mistake. It's hard to say. If these things are being pulled in too many directions as they attempt to maybe repair to their original console, I don't know. But it was interesting that it occurred regardless. Never had any problems like that, though, with the Xbox or PS4 stuff, so maybe it's an interesting issue with the Switch Pro controller. I'm not too sure. But otherwise, felt really good to game with these controllers on the N64. Xbox One and Switch Pro in particular, I think, handled the best. They lend themselves very well to the experience. I've just never, in particular, been such a big fan of the PlayStation 4 controller. I'm fine with the 3. I gamed a lot on the 3. That was my main console of that generation. Wasn't much of a PS4 guy. Was an Xbox guy. Now I'm kind of an everything guy. But that's probably why. I just haven't messed around with that controller as much compared to what else I've played with today. But they all paired. Mapping is awesome. You can really tailor your experience down to just every detail to squeeze the most out of it. Like how I was able to kind of build this for Star Fox 64. You can do that for any game. It's fantastic. It's got great utility. But it doesn't matter, because you could just plug and play. Like, you don't have to do any of that. It's the best of both worlds. A deep experience for someone who's a real enthusiast, and a casual experience for someone that likes N64, has a bit of nostalgia for it, and just wants to just be able to casually pick it up and play with controllers they already own. It's awesome. So, overall, definitely a big fan of this device and the utility that it offers. It's very, very cool. I'm looking forward to what the future holds, because it seems like this is starting to kind of blow up now. There's a GameCube adapter on the horizon. That's going to be awesome to see. I'll definitely have to get my hands on that to play with that around as well, because similar to this, just being able to map some of these commands to certain GameCube games, very cool idea. So looking forward to that. Had a lot of fun here. If you found the video helpful or informative, feel free to subscribe. It's always the best way to help me grow the channel. We've also got a Discord now. In the past, I've been putting all my news and updates on the official Facebook page. That's going to be going away. Got a Discord channel now. It's where all the news and updates occur, plus just a fun place to hang out, talk about games and movies and stuff like that. So feel free to drop in. All the info is in the description. Thanks everyone for watching, and have a great rest of your day.